What was the sin that this deer committed? What was the sin that the zebra committed?
So they team up, approaching their prey from different angles. While the team keeps their prey from getting away. Of all the world's cats, lions are the only social animal, especially at dinner time. After a kill is made, males always eat first, then the females. What's left goes to the cubs.
What was the sin that this rabbit committed? Is there a creator God? Did God really create this world? Could a sensible God create such a terrible world which operates on the fundamental maxim that might is right? That is, the powerful takes on the meek? This lamentation shall go on and on and on. This world is indeed very bad. Every day, billions of lives are meeting their end in such a horrific way to be just a meal for their predators. There is so much of pain and bloodshed, and the victims are devoured alive by mighty predators. Some shall say that man who did evil in his previous birth was born as a lower animal to pay for his sins. That's nonsense. It is nonsense because the number of lower animals are zillions in number, whereas the human population is just in billions. The numbers don't tally to believe that it is true. There are millions of life forms, and each of the small sized life forms are zillions in number, and there is a predator for almost every life form. Hence, these life forms did not originate from the sins of mankind. Thus, this world should have evolved naturally, and newer species evolved to feed on the other animals. Obviously, the world works on the maxim, might is right. However, some religions believe that one God created this world in 6 days and took rest on the 7th day. Pity. If indeed such a God exists, and if he created this world, he could not have created in such a way that one life becomes the food for the other. It is really terrible to create the world in this way. As a minimum model, the creator, if any, could have at least created the species as vegetarians, feeding on the produce of the plants and trees alone, like paddy, wheat, maize, banana, mango, apple, etc. It would have made a whole lot of difference to the basic ethics of the world. Most of the carnivorous animals having no option except killing for food, violence had subconsciously been accepted as a norm by humanity. Thus, man derived his ethical concept from the animal world, and hence there had been so much of violence in the world, not just on the hapless animals, but on the meek men by the mighty men. Hence, this terrible world evolved naturally and there wasn't any creator God. That's what actually the Tamil literature says. Tolkappiyam says that the species evolved with incremental senses of perception, starting from the sense of touch and followed by taste, smell, vision, hearing, and finally the man possessing all these along with the sixth sense. As per Tamil's understanding, there wasn't a creator God and life evolved naturally. Hence, as the world wasn't created by something called God, and the world having evolved through natural selection, the basic ethics of the world is obviously might is right. But we know that for the civilized world, might is right is a horrific philosophy. Universal love and brotherhood, compassion to other lives, living and letting others live, equality of all in the eyes of the law, etc. are the accepted norms of civilized life. This is because man had evolved to possess the sixth sense and is philosophically evolving as a godly species. Yes, the men who promote peace and non-violence is more godly than even the creator God, if any. We even see the acts of kindness in the animal world even without the so-called sixth sense. There are some exceptional animals among many a species who do not hunt the young ones and they also don't hunt the mothers of the young ones. These animals are also godlike. But these are the exceptions rather than the norms. Hence, this world was originally built on the might is right natural law which most humans imbibed from nature. Hence, as per the basic law of nature, any goodness would not succeed just because it is good. Let me repeat this most important canonical law of nature. As per the basic law of nature, any goodness would not triumph just because it is good. The goodness would only triumph when it musters necessary strength. This is proven by the fact that Buddhism, which was a religion of love, was destroyed in India, the very place of its origin, by the invading rogue community through violence. This is the classic example to prove that goodness would not succeed just because it is good. This is the basic law of nature. As some religions believe that God created this world, it invariably means that their God is responsible for the origin of such a cruel law. Could such God exist? As a researcher of Tamil spirituality for a decade now, I had always wondered that there is no such a concept or worship of any deity as a creator of the world among Tamils. In fact, Tamil literature cursed the creator if he really existed. Tamil literature called this world as a cruel world. இன்னாதம்ம இவ்வுலகம் இனிய காண்க இதன் இயல்புணர்ந்தோரே is a part of புறநானூறு poem of Sangam era by Pakkudukai Nankaniyar, which says, the world is indeed bad and having understood its character, look at the positive aspects of it and make yourself happy. This poem is considered to be a part of the philosophy of Asivagam, the ancient way of life of Tamils. Tirukkural also doesn't call the hypothetical creator of the universe as God and refers to him just a creator and curses him having created such a pitiable world. Hence, Tamils never worshipped anything as the creator of the universe. Ancient Tamils understood that the world evolved naturally through a process called evolution. However, the question remains on the purpose of this universe and the force, if any, that created it. This question, however, can never be resolved. I don't deny that there is something astonishingly very beautiful about this world too. We see symmetry everywhere, full of beautiful colors, smell, and taste. The very engineering and functioning of the human body is marvelous. There are so many wonders. How does the cobra know that the liquid that secretes in its fangs could be the poison for the enemy? Who created this beautiful pattern on its hood? We shall keep on wondering on the beauty of this world, which would be endless. There is definitely a basic and subconscious intelligence in every organism which mutates in beautiful diversity. But Despite everything, there isn't any creator God. That is the truth. I said that Tamils never worshipped any deity as a creator of this universe. However, the very word God evolved from Tamil, which we would discuss later. If so, who was the God of the ancient Tamils? There was no one God. There were many. Shiva, Muruga, Indra, Krishna, and Vishnu are the prominent gods of Tamils. They were actually Siddha kings in various eras who contributed to the welfare of humanity, fostered the ethical guidelines for the humans, raised Kundalini and attained suprahuman powers, won over the five senses through penance, and hence triumphed over death, and finally buried alive, termed as Jiva Samadhi. This is the definition of God as per Tamils or Sivakam. To make you grasp this definition, I would describe the first three gods of humanity. Shiva was the king of humanity about 20,000 years ago. He developed iron smelting technology, created the percussion sound equipment for the first time, created political science concept called Samaveda, brought in the consciousness about time and defined its basic measures, and created the lunar calendar, now known as Islamic calendar, propounded duality concept, studied astronomy, developed a medicinal concept, and suggested the evolution of life through five elements called earth, water, fire, wind, and space. These were some of his contributions for the betterment of the world. He discovered the primary form of Kundalini Yoga, which is preserved through his third eye symbolism and the snake around his neck. He initiated the first Tamil Sangam and created pictorial writing system for Tamil and formalized a scheme for coining new words. Shiva was the first person to have attained nirvana and triumphed over death, and hence became the first god of humanity. Murugan was the second great Siddha who lived through the deluge about 10,000 years ago. He developed the farming technology and also brought in vegetarianism and non-violence for the first time in the world. He developed martial arts and protected the meek from the valiant. He formalized a way of life called Asivakam with the elephant and lotus as its symbols, and created the seven female deities called Saptakanni, representing a philosophical concept each. He preserved the history of Shiva by creating conceptual images for all the contributions that Shiva, the first Siddha, made for humanity. That's how the culture of worshipping the gods through images originated, and it was Murugan who initiated image worship. The images of Indian gods are not some meaningless depictions, and they actually preserve the history of the gods pictorially. Thus, it is not stupidity to worship the gods through images. This fundamental fact has to be learnt and acknowledged by the world. Murugan created the first sidereal calendar for agriculture based on the first zodiac that he created, called Sithar Orai in Tamil and Orayon in English, retaining the memory of Shiva. He perfected the Kundalini Yoga that Shiva initiated with 7 chakra activation and created the Pranava Mandiram called Om associated with Kundalini Yoga. That's why a snake is picturized with Murugan. Murugan chaired the second Tamil Sangam and developed the syllabic script now known as Indus Valley script. Murugan attained nirvana and his Jiva Samadhi is celebrated as Satti Viradam, that is Shashti Viradam, Satti being the ancient Tamil word for Kundam, the pot. Ravanan and Indran, the heroes of the Ramayana war, were the next great Siddhas who lived about 7,000 years ago. Ravanan was an astronomer, and he, along with his son Indran, created the first luno-solar calendar, which is now called as Saka calendar, followed in most of India and in some southeastern countries. Ravanan invented Veena, which was a highly sophisticated form of yar. The father-son duo contributed to music and dance, known today as Carnatic music and Bharatanatyam respectively. Indran invented spokes wheel for the first time, which revolutionized agriculture and warfare. The Tamil word for engine, Endiram, originated from the name Indiran, as wheel is the primary component of any engine, which Indran invented. Ravanan family created many engines. The father-son duo developed flying machines also. Indiran mastered 5 supernatural skills for the first time and hence was called Aindiran, which gave rise to his name as Indiran. One of such skills is Lehimam, which means making oneself lighter, and he often rose above the clouds with his skill to forewarn his subjects on the impending rains and storms, and hence was called the god of rain, obviously. He won the war against Rama and attained nirvana. As he was a great Siddha who raised the Kundalini power and performed feats like floating in the air, he was awarded the white elephant as his mount after his times to symbolize the higher seat of Asivaham. The vehicle of the gods symbolize the attributes of the gods and pictorially preserve the history. For instance, the dog with Shiva depicts the history that Shiva hunted animals, as that was the way of life in his times. The snake with Shiva symbolizes that it was Shiva who discovered Kundalini Yoga for the first time. Having described the first three gods of humanity, let us repeat the definition of God to make the understanding complete. Gods were actually the human Siddhas who contributed to the welfare of humanity, fostered the ethical guidelines for the humans, raised the Kundalini Shakti, and attained suprahuman powers, won over the five senses through penance, and hence escaped death, and finally buried alive, termed as Jiva Samadhi. This is the definition of God as per Asivaham, the way of life of ancient Tamils. Thus, the Siddhas who triumphed over death and buried alive became the gods. They were buried alive in earthen pots called as urns. This is what is meant by the etymology of the word God. The word God evolved from gut, that is kudam, which is a Tamil word for a pot. God etymology also suggests that the word God is related to burial mound. Hence, even by the etymology of the word God, the God is nothing but the human Siddha who attained Nirvana and Jiva Samadhi. Despite this flawless definition of God, which is indeed the Western definition itself, the West perceives the God as the creator of the world, which is terribly wrong. God did not create this world in 6 days and rested on the seventh day, and the basic nature of the world is might is right, which no sensible God would have desired. I said that there is no creator God, and the gods are actually the enlightened human Siddha. You shall then ask whether there is any benefit in worshipping these human gods. Yes. First of all, we are thanking them for their wonderful contributions by remembering them. Secondly, we are retaining the history of mankind through their worship, as these gods were also the kings of humanity in various eras of time. Thirdly, and most importantly, the spirits of these gods do exist and guide us and help us if we sincerely seek their intervention, which is absolutely true. I said that there is no creator God, and the natural law of the world is might is right. You shall then ask why these human gods, at least, doesn't automatically guarantee the triumph of the good over the evil. The lotus symbolism of Asivaham should be learnt to understand this. Firstly, lotus takes its birth in the darkness, but it opens only to the light. In fact, it closes itself in the evening, avoiding the darkness, and opens again to the light in the morning. This symbolizes that man should always seek the light of wisdom and refrain from dark things. Secondly, lotus is not wet by water and hence not adulterated by dirt and hence retains its purity. Likewise, man should retain his purity of thought and action. Finally, even if water level rises, the lotus rises together, thus not submerging under the water. It is a much lauded character of lotus. This symbolizes that humans should always try to retain their morality and status despite the calamities in their life. It is because of these properties that lotus has been chosen as one of the symbols of Asivaham, and the gods are portrayed as perched on it. Thus, the lotus symbolism of Asivaham suggests that gods love humans who are open to wisdom, retains their purity, and strive very hard to achieve good deeds. Thus, the gods would not themselves protect the good unless there is an effort to protect the good by the humans. Thus, the responsibility of making the world good rests with humans, and the gods would only help the process. This is because the gods don't groom humans as lazy animals, as these gods themselves were very resourceful when they were humans. Punishing the evil people overthrowing a tyrannical rule, etc., rests with humans and not with the gods. People often believe that God would take care of the evil people. Gods don't do that by themselves. The gods expect that humans initiate efforts to defeat the evil forces. The gods would only help such a process. If evil things prevailed in the world, it is because of the lack of efforts by humans to counter them. God is positivity. It helps the one with confidence and hard work to succeed, as the gods love the hard-working people. There is a saying, where there is will, there is a way. It's the gods who help create this way without you being aware of it. They indeed support acts of good intention of good humans for the triumph of good over the evil. The world went through so many miseries just because of the lack of significant human effort. If humans understand this basic fact, the world will be a lot different in the coming days. I say in the coming days because the dark age had ended when the Mayan calendar ended. We are in the golden era of truth. That's why the humanity came to know of the Illuminati only after the dawn of the golden era, even though they had been in existence for the past 3,500 years. The pristine way of life called Asivagam of the ancient world, which was destroyed completely, is also resurfacing now to prove that it is the dawn of the golden era. It is resurfacing not due to human efforts alone, but with the support of the gods. I shall testify to it. When I said that the dark era had ended, it means that we are indeed affected by time, characterized as good or bad. The celestial bodies do have an impact on humans and is a contributing factor on deciding the quality of time. That is how the humanity had an era of bad times called Kali Yuga, and Buddhism and Asivagam were destroyed by evil forces by ruthlessly executing the Buddhas and Siddhas themselves. And similar things happened all over the world. The fall of the Buddhas of the north and the Siddhas of the south is perplexing me. The Siddhas and Buddhas seems to have understood the order of the times and accepted the fate and seems to have silently underwent the painful end. Looks like our Buddhas and Siddhas were fatalists who accepted the fate. This notion might have emerged due to the fall of the standard in Siddham itself to be in tune with the Kali times. However bad the times are, human effort would mitigate the sufferings proportional to the efforts made. Hence, fate shall be remodeled based on the efforts made. Thus, we are governed by fate, which we shall change to a great extent through our hard effort, and when we make our efforts with good intention, the gods would help our efforts in subtle and invisible ways. This is how we shall evaluate the happenings in our individual lives or the happenings in a society. Fate plus our efforts plus God's help makes life better. Even if you don't worship any god, if we make genuine efforts with good intention, the gods will be on our side to see us through the difficult times. But believing in God boosts our psychological strength, making us assured that we are not alone, which is anyway true. I have been saying that the basic law of nature is might is right. However, if we make efforts to make the good to triumph, good would indeed triumph. Apart from God willing this, the very natural reality of this world also helped this happen. How? If a person is injured, the pain and sufferings would be the same irrespective of whether the person is good or evil. This reality subtly expresses in a way that makes the good to triumph if you make sufficient efforts. The following Thirukural couplet would reveal the intricacy of the natural justice. Pirarkinna murpagal sayyin, tamakkinna pirpagal tame varum. The meaning of it is that if you do harm to others in the forenoon, you would reap the retribution for it in the afternoon. This is due to the collective consciousness of the society, which would decide the character of natural justice. Thus, it depends on what the majority perceives as harm. If the majority perceives that bribery is no harm, which is actually stupid, then there is no immediate retribution for this harm but would consume the society in the long run. That's why educating the society on good virtues is very important, which molds the collective consciousness. Hence, It's human consciousness and human efforts which decides the natural justice. If we are rightly conscious of what is good or bad and make efforts, then good would triumph with God's assistance both in our personal lives and on the lives of a society. Sage Thiruvalluvar places more thrust on human efforts than even the God's assistance. That's what Thirukural means through the couplet, தெய்வத்தான் ஆகாது எனினும் முயற்சிதம் மெய்வருத்த கூலி தரும். That is, even if gods can't do for you, your efforts will pay you the dividend proportional to your efforts. Thus, in a nutshell, the first is the fate dictated by the celestial order, the second factor is our efforts to change the fate positively, and the third is the God's will which helps in the triumph of the good. Fate plus efforts plus God's will, outcome. For the God's will to prevail, the step 2 is essential, which is the effort we are supposed to make. Without our efforts, God's will would not prevail. That's how we need to evaluate the happenings in the life of an individual or the society. As a summary, there is no creator God. Might is right is the basic norm of this world, and hence goodness would not triumph without human efforts. The collective consciousness of a society would dictate the natural justice, and hence awareness on the basic morality is necessary for the good to prevail. The human siddhas who attained nirvana are the real gods of humanity. Apart from contributing to the welfare of the humanity, they taught us the basic morality for a sustainable society, and their spirits indeed help our efforts for justice and welfare. Elohim is Shiva, God is Shiva, Allah is Shiva.